أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام والتحية والإكرام على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب إله العالمين المخاطب بطه وياسين، الذين سمي في السماء بأحمد وفي الأرض بأبي القاسم محمد. وعلى أهل بيت الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المكرمين المنتقمين المنتجبين، لا سيما وفي ابتدائهم للعالمين. روحي وأرواح العالمين لإضراب مقدمهم الفداء، واللعنة الدائمة الباقية على أعدائهم ومنكر فضائلهم ومصائبهم وغاصبي حقوقهم أجمعين. أما بعد، فقد قال الله سبحانه تبارك وتعالى في محكم كتابه ومتقن كتابه: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الله فضل بعضكم على بعض في الرزق. صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوات محمد وعلى
اللهم
for the acceptance of Majalis Society and Salawat Muhammad.
صل على
And to hasten the reappearance of our Imam and Jalanda for the Chief Society and Salawat Muhammad. The verse of the Holy Quran which I recited in front of you is part of verse number 71 from Surah Al-Nahl, which is the 16th surah of the Holy Quran. In this verse, or this part of the verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about a very important and interesting thing that's related to our lives, particularly our lives today, and also gives us insight into some of the broader principles. The topic that I am or have been speaking about this Yawm al-Adha is regarding social justice, as we heard before, and I wanted to tie in this verse and this topic with regards to justice and how that ties, how these two points tie together with one another. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in this holy verse reminds people that Allah has not made everybody equal when it comes to the matter of sustenance and provisions. And then he says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given some people more and some people less from in the matter of provisions. So now this raises some questions in our lives, in particular with regards to the topic of justice. That, of course, justice is one of our usul-din, one of our principles of faith, roots of faith. And if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made, or He Himself is saying that there is a distinction between different people receiving different risks, different sustenance, then how does that affect the justice of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the fact that He is just? And also with regards to the principles of earning this wealth and also its redistribution, and how should that be? So inshallah today we'll just speak briefly about this particular thing, introducing it, and then inshallah tomorrow we'll talk in a bit more detail about the matter of redistribution and what does Islam speak about that. But of course this first question is the most important one, that if I believe that God is just and He Himself is saying that this is by design, that some people have got more and some people have got less, then how does that fit into His principle of justice and the fact that he is just. So of course, as you know, and probably many of you have seen that example or diagram which shows the difference between equality and equity. That equality is that everybody has the same, but equity is not that everybody has the same. Everybody has according to what they require, what they need, and that is different to equality. Just because somebody has something more than another person, that might mean that that person is requiring more compared to the other person. So equity is of course that each person has according to what they need and not according to, for example, some arbitrary division. So that's very important, first of all. But also that this division that's been made, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that He has given some people more, that will not come without any restrictions or without any something attached to it. For this I share a hadith and an answer from Imam Alayhi which gives us a little bit of insight into this particular point. So inshallah, Muhammad. So a person came to, it's narrated from different Imams, but this narration which I'm mentioning is from Imam Askari alayhi salatu. And this person comes to the Imam and he asks him about the division of inheritance. He says that how come, this is in the Holy Quran, and this is something that in all the schools of thought in Islam is agreed upon, that the son will receive 2 shares of inheritance from the father or the mother, and the daughter will receive 1. So of course, that companion asks what each one of us is thinking, that, Ya Ibn Rasulullah, isn't this unfair? Isn't it unfair that the son's receiving 2 shares of inheritance and the daughter's only receiving 1? So Imam Alayhi before he gives the answer to this question, he mentioned something this is why I've mentioned this conversation. He gives a principle, he gives a usul before he gives the answer. And this is very important because our religion, and we take pride in this, that the madhab of Ahl-e-Bait is not the madhab of personalities or the madhab of people, it is the madhab of principles, where each and every principle is the most important thing, and those personalities which are in accordance with the principles that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala laid down are the ones that we follow. We follow Ahl-e-Bait because they are in accordance with the principles that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has described about those personalities who are worthy of being followed. So Imam Alayhi replies to this person by saying that when you saw this person's inheritance and you saw that his son is getting 2 shares and his daughter is getting 1 share, then you only looked at that child, whether it's the boy or the girl, as a child, whereas Islam looked at the child as a person who's going to grow up. Islam didn't just look at his or her present, but Islam looked at their future as well. Islam didn't just look at that child is a child, but he looked at the future of that child when he's going to be an adult and he's going to be grown up. When that child grows up, he will be a husband. That boy will grow up to be a husband, and then he will be a father. And then you have additional responsibilities. So Imam Alayhi says the principle is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has not given any person any rights except that there is a responsibility attached to that right. And there's no responsibilities that a person has unless there's a right attached to that responsibility. In other words, there is no separation between rights and responsibility. Wherever there's a right, there is a responsibility, and wherever there's a responsibility, there is a right attached to that responsibility. Usually, and this is very important to mention, usually we're very good to talk about our rights. We always want to demand our rights. We always want to talk about our rights. But when it's come to our responsibilities, we're not so vocal, we're not so acknowledging even of our responsibilities. So as vocal as I am about my rights, I also have to be about my responsibilities. So just to complete that story with the Imam alayhi salatu wasalam, Imam says to him that boy will grow up and he will be a husband and he will be a father. And he will have additional responsibilities because the husband and the father have responsibility towards their wife and their children. Whereas the girl, when she grows up, she has no additional responsibilities financially. So that share that she has for herself, that is solely for her. Whereas the boy receives one share for himself and one share for the additional responsibility that he has. One share for that additional responsibility that he will have when he grows up and he becomes an adult and he becomes a father and he becomes a husband and he becomes a father. He will have that additional responsibility. Therefore, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, recognizing that additional responsibility, has given him an additional share. So here this is the first point and principle and answer. That yes, there is difference in division of sustenance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but wherever there is a difference in division and sustenance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there is responsibilities attached to it. That means that if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving me more, I have more responsibilities. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving me more, then I have more responsibilities. And just to highlight this and make this really clear, we can see that Aimma alayhi salatu wasalam lived through different times. For example, at the beginning of the prophetic mission, at the beginning of the announcement of prophethood, the situation amongst the Muslims financially was not so great. Most of the people who accepted Islam were poor people. Of course, their acceptance of Islam is also related to this point. That for the first time they realized that in the eyes of God, each person is the same. The master and the slave will stand next to each other when they're going to pray. There will be no distinction as far as being servants of God. And that's why those people who were the less well off in society were more inclined towards Islam in the beginning. But then later on, we come to the later Imams, and some people who were not so, for example, they did not see the wisdom from the Imams of the changing times. This story or this narration is narrated from Imam, or with regards to Imam Baqir alayhi salatu wa salam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala. That a person came and he saw Imam alayhi salatu wa salam wearing an expensive outfit. He saw that Imam alayhi salam is wearing an outfit which is expensive. So he said to the Imam alayhi salam that your grandfather Amirul Mu'minin alayhi salam did not used to wear expensive outfits. Your grandfather Amirul Mu'minin alayhi salam used to wear simple clothing, whereas you are wearing an expensive outfit. So Imam alayhi salam told him that when my grandfather Amirul Mu'minin alayhi was the Khalifa, there were people who were living in poverty. And it is the responsibility of the leader of the people to be with the lowest strata of society. It is the responsibility of the leader, which is the opposite of what is the case today. Today the leaders live in luxury, whereas the people are dying. Imam ﷺ says it's the responsibility of the leader of the community to live at that level where the lowest person in society, or the lowest strata of society, can relate to that leader. Now Imam Baqir ﷺ says, now in my time, people are no longer living in poverty. The economic situation of people have changed and improved. In 5 generations' time, the economic situation of people has improved and changed and got better. So therefore, he dressed according to his time, and I am dressing according to mine. He dressed according to his time, I'm dressing according to mine. Then also one of the narrations says that he mentioned that he said, I have recently got married and therefore I am dressed in this way. Because my wife has made an effort, therefore I should also make an effort. This is what Imam al-Islam is speaking. Imam al-Islam is speaking. Usually what happens in our societies, the woman makes an effort, she takes like 3 hours to get ready. And the guy still dressed like a homeless person. Besides
Allah.
Whereas Imam al-Islam is saying that when she made the effort, I also have to make the effort. I also have to match the effort. Okay, nobody's saying you have to also spend 3 hours getting ready, that's going to take too long. But at least make an effort. That is the way, this is the advice and the way from Aimma salatu wasalam.
Allah.
But back to this, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed some people with more and some people with less. So that means that it is definitely a desirable thing for a person to try to seek to improve their livelihood. But it's remembering this, that is going to come with additional responsibilities. If I have more, then I will have additional, definitely when the principle has been mentioned by Imam al-Salam, that more right equals to more responsibility. That means that if I am being blessed with more by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I'm going to have more responsibility in order. And most importantly, it is the way and the method of how I seek that sustenance. How did I seek that? For this, there's a famous story that you all know. I'll quickly just refer to it. That Amir al-Mu'minin one day was passing by a masjid and he stopped, and there was a person standing outside, and he told him, take care of my camel whilst I go inside and pray. So of course, Imam al-Salam went inside and he began to pray. This person, his niyyat went towards the wrong direction. And he thought that he'll take the saddle off the camel and he will sell the saddle and make some money. So he took the saddle off and he sold it in the marketplace. When Imam al-Islam came back, he said to him that, where's my saddle? So he said there was no saddle. So he did 2 sins. First he stole, then he lied. So Imam al-Islam didn't argue with him. And he gave us a lesson. That don't argue with someone who's already committed 2 sins, because if you argue with him, he's never going to accept. Already he's committed 2 sins. Now if you argue with him, he's never going to accept. So Imam al-Islam goes to the marketplace and he sees his saddle is hanging there in the marketplace. So he asks that person who's selling it. He says that, how much is this? They said, it's 1 dinar. Just now somebody came and sold this saddle to me, 1 dinar. Imam al-Islam buys his own saddle back again. And then he says to his companion that I had intended to give this person 1 dinar for taking care of my camel. And if he had taken it from me, it would have been halal. But he sinned by stealing it, then lying, and he still got only 1. This is the meaning that rizq is fixed, but it's up to me whether I choose to take halal or haram. The amount is fixed, but it's up to me, it is my choice whether I want to seek it from halal or from haram. Sometimes you tell this person, why are you doing this? This job is haram. He says, I have no choice. No, the rizq is fixed. It's up to you whether you choose to take it from halal or take it from haram. That amount is fixed. You will receive that amount no matter Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has promised that you're going to get rizq. Right? And most importantly, inshallah, rest for tomorrow, so that because the time is running out. inshallah. But this is why Imam Amir al-Mu'minin, this is the choice, whether I want to get it halal or haram. Why? Because Amir al-Mu'minin again in the introduction to the Sermon of the Muttaqeen, Sermon of Muttaqeen is also called Sermon of Hammam in Nahj al-Balagha, where Imam al-Islam talks about the sifat, the characteristics of Muttaqeen. In that sermon, before he gives the sermon, he mentions there's an introduction to the sermon. In that introduction, he says that praise be to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who did not attach the matter of sustenance with the matter of ibadah. Praise be to the one who did not attach the matter of sustenance with the matter of ibadah. That Pharaoh is getting rizq, Namrud is getting rizq, Shaddad is getting rizq, Abu Sufyan is getting rizq. All the people who are themselves, Pharaoh is claiming I'm God, but he's still getting rizq from Allah. So Imam al-Islam says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not attach the rizq to ibadah. Now you also don't attach your ibadah to any other reason. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't stop the rizq even though people rejected him, they didn't believe in him. So you also, if you want to be muttaqi, don't attach your ibadat to any other reasoning, any other gharaz, any other, that I want to do ibadat because I'm going to get it. No, I'm going to get rizq. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give me rizq anyway. But I have to do ibadat because he's worthy of being worshipped. Recite salawat alhamdulillah. But this source of getting rizq is the most important thing. Because why? The place and the method and the way that I will get the rizq, that will affect not just my physical being, but my spiritual being. That will affect my spiritual being. So just as concerned as I am about the meat that I'm buying, is this zabiha or not, I should be concerned about the money that I'm earning, is this halal or not. As concerned, at least, if not more concerned. Why? Because it doesn't have just physical effects on my life, it has spiritual effects. What are the spiritual effects? The spiritual effect is that the Imam can be talking to you and you don't understand him. On the day of Ashura, Imam Hussain speaks to the army and they say to him that we don't understand. So was he speaking in Chinese and they were not understanding? No, he was speaking in Arabic and they were also all knowing Arabic. So why are they saying that we don't understand? And Imam says, you're right that you don't understand, because your stomachs are full of haram. Because your stomach is full of haram, and this is Sahib al-Tathir, and if he is Sahib al-Tathir, then you can't understand him when your stomach is full of haram. When your stomach is full of haram, you cannot understand, you cannot comprehend what he is trying to say. So if I want to be close to Imam Hussain alayhi salatu wasalam, this is something that's very important in my life. Inshallah, everything else we'll mention tomorrow. Imam Hussain says, if I want to be close to Imam Hussain alayhi salam, if I want to understand Imam Hussain alayhi salam, if I want to know his message and understand him, then I have to make sure that that earning of it and eating of it and all the process that it is, each and every part of it has to be in accordance with. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, yes, and more, but remember you will have more responsibility attached to it. Whatever more that you get, more than you need. Whatever that you get, more than you need. What you need, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will provide. But more than you need, you will have additional responsibility in your life. And of course, that a person has to know that this is not the goal in my life. This seeking this is not the goal in my life. The goal in my life is to be close to Masjid. The goal in my life is to recognize Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is the goal in my life. That I know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and I know Masjid, and that if anything is getting in that way, then I have to abandon that in order to prioritize that in my life. And that's the message of Imam Hussain, that he goes to Karbala to show that people are getting diverted from the remembrance of God because of other things. But remember, rizq is guaranteed. What is not guaranteed is guidance. Imam al-Salam says that I am surprised at the person who runs after the sustenance, even though it's guaranteed. But he doesn't run after ibadat even though it's not guaranteed. He has to get the ajr from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Nevertheless, Imam Hussain al-Salam, these are the days and the ayyam where the caravan of Imam Hussain al-Salam goes from Karbala to Kufa. They are, in these days, they have arrived in the city of Kufa. And in this time is a very important, very instructive lesson from what the caravan of Imam Hussain does, what Nabi says, and what transpires in the city of Kufa. On the third day after Ashura, 13th or 14th of Muharram, the caravan of Imam Hussain arrives in Kufa. At night they arrive. The forces of Umar ibn Sa'd, they make their caravan camp outside of Radio Mukulthum that announced to enter at night. This is Kufa, people recognize. So Shuma says that today you have come as a prisoner. Today you have come as a prisoner to this city. You will enter when we tell you to enter. We will tell you, we will enter, you will enter when we tell you to enter. So they wait until the morning. In the morning they enter into the city. When Bizan Sallallahu begins to address her sermon, there's a blind companion of Amir al-Mu'minin, Abdullah ibn Afif. He hears this voice and he says to his companion next to him that, is this the day of judgment? He says to him, why? What do you mean, is this the day of judgment? He says that I'm hearing the voice of my master Amir al-Mu'minin. I'm hearing the voice of my master Amir al-Mu'minin. I'm hearing the voice of my master Amir al-Mu'minin. So his companion says to him that this is not Amir al-Mu'minin. This is the daughter of Amir al-Mu'minin who is delivering the sermon the way that her father delivered the sermon. At that moment, Abdullah ibn Afif is enraged. He stands up, he says to Ibn Ziyad, that how dare that you enter the family of the Holy Prophet, the family of Amir al-Mu'minin in this place? Don't you have any shame that you brought the family of the Prophet in this place? Ibn Ziyad says to him, Abdullah, if you were not old, I would have ordered you to be executed, ordered you to be killed. At that moment in time, he is old, so they take him, the people from his tribe, they take him back to his home. When he goes to his home, some time later, Ibn Ziyad sends his forces to his home. Abdullah ibn Afif, he only has one daughter, and he's blind. So his daughter says to him that I wish that I was a son so that I could have defended you and saved your life. So Abdullah says to his daughter that don't worry, you just tell me which side they are attacking me from so that I know and I will fight them. And the daughter of Abdullah ibn Afif instructs him, guides him, whether they're attacking me from the right or they're attacking me from the left. In this whole battle, he eventually gets executed. In this whole battle, they don't do anything to the daughter. Historians wrote that why didn't they do anything to the daughter? They said that because in Arab culture, they would not harm the children or the women. In Arab culture, they don't harm the women or the children, even if she's instructing you about the battle. But unfortunately, on the day of Ashura, they did not even observe this. That the women and children of Imam Hussain, the women and children of the household of the Prophet, they also had the tents burned down. They also had the tents burnt down. They also had their valuables stolen. They also were tied in the ropes. They also were tied and taken from Karbala to Kufa to Allah.